ready to build resiliency, create a healthy lifestyle, and overcome adversity with a warrior mindset. This is Define the Fight with Mariah Prussia.
Hey everybody, welcome back. It is Happy Monday, and we are here knocking it out with somebody who is the epitome of demonstrating resilience, a warrior mindset, and really overcoming so many different obstacles and life adversities. Brian Reyelt, all I can say is I have met him through some of the different SEAL crucibles, was an amazing mentor and continues to be. He's got his degree in nutrition, unbeatable mind coach, SEAL fit trainer, father of 2 girls. He owns and operates Eat, Heal, Thrive, personal nutrition, health, and wellness. And let's just knock it out. He holds the Guinness World Records now for the men in regards to 11,988 burpees in 24 hours. Who in the heck does that, and who trains for that? No other than Brian Reyelt. So welcome to the show, Brian.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
You know, we had a great conversation. It's been a while since we've touched base. It was 2021 is when diving into Tip of the Spear, getting into the mindset, the focus of really pushing yourself to the red line. What is that red line? Defining it and making sure that you're becoming whole mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. And clearly there's been a lot of different things in your life on overcoming different obstacles and adversity. You know, let's dive into the things that you're doing now. Clearly there was something that led you to that point in life. Now, I know you've overcome addiction, which is a lot of different individuals. Let's talk about those pieces, or what led you to addiction and how you overcame that first, Brian.
Sure. So if I were to tell my whole story, we would have to have a 24-hour block here and a therapist along with us. But in the shortcome of it, to define my fight, so to speak, is I was in the restaurant industry. I grew up in the restaurant industry. My mother died when I was younger, and my father ended up leaving us as well. And I was always raised in believing in God. I'm very faithful to that. And I kind of turned my back to it after that portion of my life. And I turned to alcohol as my coping mechanism. And it's not the safest, not the healthiest, as we all know and can imagine. And then as I, was on my own and built restaurants, and we, with a couple other guys, we created a little mini empire in the Boston area. And that was my mechanism. And so from going into the restaurant game, being a chef, working 100+ hours a week, getting married, having 2 kids, the house, everything else, and it started to trickle down and became a toxic part of my life, and that I needed to pull the plug completely on, and I needed to get help. I needed help, and I needed people that loved me and really cared for me to tell me and pull me out of that situation that I couldn't see my own feet in front of me, and say, you need help. It wasn't me on my own trying to do it, wasn't getting anywhere. So I got the help I needed, long story short. And then it took a little bit of time to figure out what I really wanted to do. And I knew I wanted to be of service. I'd always been in the service industry, and always had a passion in fitness. Obviously, I think the way to the heart is through the belly. So nutrition and food is a huge part of my life. And if I could have tied those together somehow, it would be great. And it took me some time to figure that out. And in the meantime, I went through a very dark period of life in my own regards. I had put on, to talk about a depressive, people that deal with depression will relate to this. But I was the guy that put on 100 pounds by eating pints of ice cream while sitting in parking lots of grocery stores, crying. And I have no shame saying it, because this is my reality. And then having to get out of that, pulling out of that, finding an unbeatable mind, kind of connected at the right time for me. And I just pivoted, and I really was able to dial in on what I wanted to do, and changed my lifestyle, lost 100 pounds, obviously connected with you and many other like-minded individuals. to work on themselves across the 5 mountains, right? Your physical, your mental, your emotional, your intuition, and then your spiritual. Came back to my faith with Christ, who I believe saved my life many times. And, now I'm able to pursue what I want to do. I put the work in myself. I try to lead from the front, so to speak, lead by example. Like, you can do it. Like, show people that things are possible, and I'll be the first to step up on the line and say, let's go. And now I love working with multiple people, and whether it's somebody in their 60s that is dealing with, some cardiac issues, get them moving, different things. We do personalized plans for people. Or is it somebody that's in their 20s or 30s that is in the athletic realm and wants to push and wants to do an ultra marathon or do a seal fit crucible or whatever it may be,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I love it. I love the gamut of people I get to work with, and just watching them change.
For you going through and recognizing, right, that change needed to happen, it had to occur. It required action, which you took. But through those steps, it's not just all of a sudden, boom, everything changes. So working in the restaurant industry, is that something that you shifted and said, okay, I need to see my way out of this? Because I know you do personal training now. And I mean, you were awarded one of the winning executive chefs. I mean, all those different things, those accolades, add up. But what was that moment where you're like, okay, I had to create this shift first to then start moving into the next piece? Because when you're trying to put a jigsaw puzzle back together, it's not like magically you grab all the pieces and you throw it together. It's like you start with one piece and then you add another piece, and then you slowly start making that connection to make the picture whole. What were some of those small steps that you had to take personally to start putting the pieces back together?
Yeah, absolutely. And great analogy with the jigsaw. It would be putting the corners together first, right? Yes, award-winning chef, cooked at James Beard House, all sorts of different trophies and things that I really didn't mean much to me at the time. But very, I was acknowledged. And for me to leave that, it was okay. Because I knew it wasn't a healthy relationship I had within the corners, so to speak, right? So to start building the corners out was like, okay, you need to fix yourself. You need to get yourself in a position that you can take care of yourself in a healthier manner, because what you're doing is just killing yourself. Second, you need to be in a position that afterwards that you can help be a positive impact on your family. And what does that look like? You're never around in this other lifestyle that you're winning accolades. So does it really matter? Or do you want to see your kids grow up? What really matters to you? And that mattered more to me. So I had to figure out how to better myself to be better for my family, and then better for my community, for people around me. And then just, the pieces slowly start falling into place, figuring out where are my downfalls, and needing to be shown in many times, dealing with different mental, you can say illnesses or, different capacities. Sometimes you have to be shown, and it's easier that way. And if you're willing to accept it, that is the key. You have to be able to accept the truth. And trust the people around you. And trusting people was very difficult too for me. So
I think
trusting was huge. And
I think trust is difficult for a lot of people. If you've been burned in the past, whether it's through a personal relationship, through a business relationship, it is a challenge. But you made a point of owning how you show up, right? And then taking accountability for your actions as well. We all have to do that. And I think that's the biggest issue right now, or concern within the world, is people aren't taking responsibility for what they say or what they do. And it's important that we do that, because that's when you start becoming more whole yourself, is like, okay, what part did I have in this? What part did this individual, so on and so forth. But the only thing that I can control really is what I am doing with what are my intentions, the follow through, so on and so forth. As each individual knows that overcoming different things, whether it's fear, whether it's failure, whether it's all of these different components, it takes an unbeatable mind and it takes that perseverance to say, hey, I'm not going to fold. I need to lay all my cards on the table, and what am I going to do to win this hand? Because we only have one life, so why not step up, grab all the cards that we can, and play them where we want to play them? And Brian has done that. You know, Brian, we were talking before the break. You're talking about, you know, overcoming addiction, which is a daily battle. Really, is what it comes down to. But you said something to me when we were talking on the phone. Is, you know, typically an addiction will transition from one thing into the next. But you like to look at it as this is shifting to pushing your potential. And you definitely pushed your potential. And I do want to bring up one note too, is that you did raise, during breaking the record, you raised over $22,000 for the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, which was inspired by your wife overcoming and beating breast cancer. So let's talk about the build up to the event prior to actually what it was like when you're in the mix of it. So tell me a little bit. Yeah. So let's talk about that. Let's go in, man.
So a couple of things. One, definitely addictions transfer for sure, whether they're healthy or not. As I mentioned, ice cream was one. It was transfer. And now, you know, in the physical realm for me, I find a lot of positive influence. I think physiology helps change our psychology. Puts me in a better place, you know, starting my day with some mental work and then going into some physical work, kind of like is a good combo platter for me. But as far as this challenge went, it really stemmed back to a previous fundraiser that I did with, that we did for vets that deal with PTSD and suicide awareness. And it was a burpee challenge. And it was as many as you could do or you felt like doing. And I put out there I was going to do 5,000. And everybody kind of laughed and chuckled. And I did it. And then the next year I did it again with a friend of mine. And he did push-ups because his knees were blown out. And after that one, we did it another time. So I had 3 years of practicing 5,000 burpees, and after that third year, I had figured out a lot, figured out patterns, right? You know, like the old Sun Tzu saying is, you know, strategy without tactics is, you know, the slowest way to victory. Strategy without tactics is the slowest way. So you need to have tactics in place, and apply your strategy to it. So I knew how to break up rep schemes and different things like that. And after we finished this one, the third one, I did it in just under 8 hours. He looked at me and he's like, you know, I think you could break the world record. And that's the last thing I wanted to hear at that point, because my body was pretty banged up after doing that many. And I didn't want to hear it, so I let it pass for a couple months, and then I revisited that thought, and I was like, you know what, I think I can do it, and it's like, okay, well, if you're gonna do it, you have to go on to Guinness and fill out an application, and tell them why you want to do it and things like that, and that word why is very important. Because you need a strong why. If you're going to be doing something, just as we spoke about transferring out of the restaurant industry for me, I needed a strong why. My family, myself, I wasn't a healthy lifestyle I was leading. So I had to change things. That was a strong why. For this one, a strong why wasn't like, oh, I just want to beat the record for my own ego or whatever it may be, just because I think I can. No, I went into it knowing I can beat it. It was in my head. I had already won in my mind before I put my hands on that mat. I was like, I'm going to train properly for this and I will beat it. But why am I going to do this? Okay, well, I watched my wife go through breast cancer, and luckily she's 5 years clear and she's doing great, and she did not have a rough road at it and rough go at it. But she did have to have, it was very challenging out of the gate. You know, she had to have surgery and all sorts of different things going on. So that was a strong why for me, was like, okay, I watched her push and find her new potential in life. And just like you're saying, it's like, okay, I help people push to find their potential, break down those walls that shouldn't exist, push past those perceived limitations. And for me, a record is just meant to be broken. And my record will be broken. Hopefully it stands some time before that happens. But it looked like, okay, this is going to be my why. Let's raise some money for breast cancer. And it really kind of struck a real chord with me. My mother died of cancer as well. So it's very close to my heart. And it allowed me to focus in on that, as opposed to just doing things to just do it.
Well, you
I
stepped
think
out
you
of
have to have a
yourself,
strong why.
right? And you stepped out of yourself.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, I need to do this, but it has to have a purpose, not just for the record, but it's for, okay, I love my wife. Clearly, I love my mother. And I'm honing in that mission and that purpose so that the will is so much stronger than overcoming the number that is in the record book.
That's right. That's right. And and at the same time too, when you do something like this, it's a sacrifice. When you're going to try to obtain a big audacious goal of the sort, whether it's in business or physical or whatever it may be, it's a sacrifice to people. My wife, as much as I was doing it in honor of her, there was a lot of times that I couldn't be around my family because you know what, you eat dinner and you have to train overnight. You know this as an athlete. There's so much training that goes involved, and you have to train for a 24-hour event. You have to train at weird hours and do weird things that are just not normal, so that your body can get used to being uncomfortable, get comfortable being uncomfortable, as we know. And so it took a sacrifice on the whole family, and it was beautiful because the whole family was able to be part of my team then during the event. So
I saw some of the images too. It looked like you clearly had a great team, a great family that was supporting you there. And clearly I saw SealFit. Who was all in attendance for that, Brian?
Yeah, so I had allies and mentors. I had, best friends, some mentors, and we had to have a full team to pull off an act like this, especially for Guinness. You have to have a laundry list of things in place, multiple cameras on you from different angles, measurements and stuff. You can have somebody come out from Guinness, from London, to judge it, but it's extremely expensive, and it wasn't worth it. We were going to just do it ourselves and just follow the guidelines by the book, which meant a lot of work. And when I say a lot, it's like having a team of people that you have to have two people counting you. One person's counting on the big screen, person's counting in a logbook, and they're watching and counting every single rep, what time, and making sure it's a clean rep or clear rep. And they have to change out every 4 hours, and they can't go back to back because it's a 24-hour event, so they don't get too tired. There's so many factors that play in. So I had all these great people, and we did it at a friend's house. He has a gym / function area, and he got DJs. It was great. We had people from the public come in, like the local police and fire department stop by. Like I said, my family was there. My wife ended up being my corner person, which was super, super important to me, because as the event went on, and I can explain more as we go here, your body just breaks down and you really need help. Like I couldn't walk to the bathroom. So you have to get to the bathroom for a break, and you have to get back to the mat to keep going. There was no quitting. Quitting's not an option. It's not even in the vocabulary. But how are you getting there and getting back? And thank goodness I have a lovely, supportive wife.
You talk about support, and I love the fact that you had her in your corner for you, because clearly you were in her corner when she needed you most, and vice versa. And that's really what partnership is all about. We're going to lead into our next break here, Brian. But when we come back, I really want to talk about the regimen and the training, because I know that at one point you were on pace for 750 burpees per hour right out of the floodgates. And I know that shifted and transitioned, but an individual who has not trained for a large event in their life may not understand all of the different, time and effort and dedication and commitment that is required to get to that end all. We spoke about the different things, the setup for the Guinness World Records, right? For breaking and all the different details. But now let's talk about the sacrifices. Let's talk about the training, because I know you as a personal trainer, myself as a trainer, every single person is like, I hate burpees. But you know what? You just knocked out 11,988. And then somebody might be complaining about, I had to do how many? It was 10. It was 10. Take a deep breath. So for training, you said you spoke about doing 3 years of doing the 5,000 burpees. I know exactly, like, I've never done the 5,000. I'm just going to let you know that. The tip of the spear, our group did, all right, we'll do 100. How many do you want to do? I said, well, you know what? I'm going to do 300 a day for a month. And I did. And I tell you what, clearly became stronger, but my wrists definitely became more weak, sore, so on and so forth. So I can only imagine the different things that you felt and experienced after 24 hours of doing burpees. So let's talk about, what did that training regimen look like for you?
Sure. So as far as training regimen goes, there's a lot that encompasses it. But the first thing I would say is in your mind, right? So there's a couple of the same thing, the big four, as we would say, big four things to control. And number one is breath control. And breath control is humongous, especially I monitor how fast my output can be by how fast I can recover. If my heart rate is jacked, how fast can I bring that thing right back down to a tactical breath where I can breathe in and out through my nose at a 4-4 count? And that is a big indicator of my condition, especially as I push harder and harder. And then it's like, having a positive attitude towards what you're doing, which is very difficult when you're doing this on a daily basis, or, you're looking long term at stuff, and visualizing yourself in success. Visualizing winning in your mind, like I said earlier, before you get on that battlefield. The losing mind thinks they're going to be able to do it and then goes on the battlefield. The winning mind says, I'm going to do this, and then they go out in the battlefield and they do it. And so you have to have established that and keep beating that into yourself, not necessarily beating, but repeating into yourself and I do it through morning meditation. And then micro goals, right? Setting up micro goals for yourself is huge. So realistic, obtainable goals that can be linked together. So you don't just start out by doing 1,000 burpees. Maybe you're just going to start out by, okay, day one or whatever. Maybe we're going to just do 2 hours worth of training here. Let's see how many I could do on the minute, and then take a minute off, maybe take a minute on, take a minute off. And you start figuring out different flow schemes, right? And your training is not just burpees, it's other stuff too, because as you mentioned, your wrists. So you need to strengthen your wrists. You need to really strengthen your posterior chain, your hip flexors. So you have to encompass different types of training, and also use wherever you are as an opportunity to train. So if I was in the beaches out in San Diego, I was like, this is fantastic. A, it's beautiful, but B, this is sand. Sand is really hard to train on. So if I can do burpee broad jumps on sand for an hour and it's going to smoke me, then great. That's a great little training session. And then you slowly build into things, right? So for me, if I took a step back, I'd like to be in a condition over the last several years, from being in this new state of mind, where if something were proposed to me today, if you were proposed to me today, a challenge of some sort, physical challenge, that I would be 2 weeks out ready to go for it. So I'd like to mentally and physically be kind of like not redlined all the time, because it's not healthy, but kind of just hanging down there and focus on recovery. But if I need to jack it up and get up to that higher pace, I can do it. If we're going to go for a big climb or whatever it may be, the Boston Marathon's running today. If I wanted to go run it, I was trying to get a bib 2 weeks ago. My wife told me I was insane. But that's just how I operate. So, it's a lot of sacrifice. You have to work on different things. You have to see what muscle groups are going to work. I've had surgery on both my wrists. My wrists weren't strong enough. So I learned to do burpees on my knuckles, which ended up leading to a problem when I finished. And also when you go into something audacious like this, that you run the risk of injury. You run the risk of things going wrong. They can go. Things can happen. It's not gonna go exactly as planned.
Well, and you
But
spoke about the cut on your knuckle. You know what most people don't recognize is that you spent 5 days in the hospital because of septic staph infection.
yes, yes. So doing them on my knuckles, cut up my knuckles, and that was fine. I was used to it. I trained that way. But however, pushing my body, if we talk about that 40% rule, like 40% further than you think your body can actually go, you really do push yourself that far to where bodily functions aren't operating at the way they're supposed to. Well, so is your immune system. You have taxed your immune system completely. And so a little nick on my knuckle led to a staph infection. Staph is around us, it's on us, it's on the mats everywhere, and usually we can just ward off it, no problem. But when my immune system was so busted down, it got into me. Next thing you know, 2 days later, my hand was puffed up. Next thing you know, I went to the ER, got it checked out. They said I had an infection, gave me some IVs, sent me home. Said if it gets worse, come back. I woke up the next day, my whole arm, my whole right arm was, 4 times the size of itself. I went back and they just didn't even ask me questions. Just took me right upstairs, and it got serious real fast, real fast. And for me, I was I wasn't even taking it as serious as I should have, because I'm like, I didn't damage my hamstrings, I didn't damage this or that or that, but this is really this is a pain, and now I have an infection. And they're like, yeah, you have a serious infection. Like, you're not going anywhere until we figure out what's going on, and you're going to get pumped with all this stuff, and then we're going to cut your hand open, and we're going to clean it out. And I had nerve damage from that, and my recovery took a ton longer than I anticipated. So yeah, I mean, that was its own journey in the recovery world. That was you learn a lot about yourself through all these things. And I feel like I spend a lot of my time in recovery. Like, my whole life is in recovery, right?
Right.
And that's why I think also, if I were going back to training for an event like this, recovery is so important. Like, how you recover is how you perform. How you sleep, how do you eat, how do you take care of yourself is how you can perform. If you're not doing those three things, then you're not going, your emotional self, right? Your emotional stressors. If you can't take care of that stuff, you can't put out. It doesn't matter what you're doing in the physical realm, because it's not worth it. Your body's not going to benefit from it. So
How many hours were you
recovery is
training?
huge.
When you're talking about the training and making sure that you have adequate amount of recovery, I know for, fighting in the cage, ring, so on and so forth, you have 6-week fight camp, typically.
Mm.
What did it look like for you? So the duration of time to train, and then when you're leading up closer to the event, what were some of the hours that you were putting in, including the exercises?
Sure. So I really kicked it into, I started to gear into it about 6 months. I started to just up my overall training, just to get stronger and work on my endurance and things like that, but just slowly building. And then once the 3 month mark hit, I really kicked it into higher gear. And I tapered all the way up, and so to the event, so that the week I could taper down into the event and be kind of like a caged animal, as you would understand. Before I went into the event, my body was raring to go. And so it was just a matter of controlling my mind and not letting it, and getting massages and IVs and things like that to maintain and stay in peak performance. But what it looked like was anything from 3 to 4 hours a day, 6 days a week. Usually take a full day of recovery. And that day would also, a full day of recovery meant also maybe go for a light jog for, say, 5, 6, 7 miles, but that was it.
Brian, that's not a recovery.
Yeah, but in these training sessions, I mean, I would do burpee sessions, and I would try to figure out my times. I'd always work with a clock, and I would work and say, okay, well, I'm gonna go for, say, 4 hours today, and I'm gonna try and do, or not try. What I'm gonna do is 12 reps the first minute. The second minute, I'm going to do 13. Then I'm going to go 12, 13, and keep bouncing back and forth for the first half hour and see how I feel. Maybe take a minute rest then, and then I'll approach the second half of the hour. And then I would approach the next hour and the next hour and the next hour. And so I'd keep building upon it, just like those micro goals. I'd build to see how my body felt, how my endurance was doing, my breath control, and then I would be able to stack practices on them, right? So it's kind of like a boosting them. And by the time I would get to, like a month and a half out, I was like, all right, now we need to start overnight training, because your body, your circadian rhythm is not used to it. So you need to switch it up. You need to get things going, and it would be like have dinner with the family, and then everybody go do their thing on their iPads or whatever. And I'm like, all right, we'll see you later. And I'd go out back to my gym, and I'd be out there from say 8 at night till 8 in the morning, and just me and a clock and food that you plan to eat. Like you need to prepare, right? So what are you going to eat? You need to refuel during this event. You're going to be shredding calories. You need to have electrolytes. So what does that all look like for you? What works best for your diet, for your system? Like I found out what worked best for me. I would eat bagels with olive oil, right? I would eat these caramel waffles. I would have electrolytes, all sorts of different stuff. I would eat almond butter, just scoops of it. But because I was getting very lean. I was getting super lean. I'm like, I need to keep up with my calories at this point. And, just push overnight, and you're like, all right, well, I was able to do 5,000, or I did 7,000 last night. I think the most I did in my training leading up to it was around 7,500 or 8,000, and I was like, that's good. That's a good number.
It is a good number because you were able to knock it out. But the same thing is you've done burpees, so it's not like you don't know how to do them, right? It's if you can do 7,000 or 7,500, you can always do more. We talk about a lot of different things, of perseverance, resilience, but the importance of a strong, indomitable will and mind. Brian, let's talk about the 24 hours of breaking the record. I know there had to have been moments where mentally you're like, okay, what's going on? And, defining that mantra, right? So I know that I have mine, which is define the fight, right? Push through, let's go. What is that fight? What are you fighting for? What were some of those moments, or did you hit some of those moments during that 24-hour record break?
Yes, absolutely. Just like your average marathoner hitting 18 miles hits the wall, I hit my barriers, and they came in several ways. It was actually crazy because when you push that hard, you go through so much. It's emotional, and so being in example would be being in the bathroom, where my wife carried me into the bathroom, and I'm going to the bathroom, and I'm just like crying, right? I'm like, I'm not gonna quit, I'm not giving up, but I can't stand up. And so she's picking me up, and she's like, get your ass out there. And so like something like that is dark. It's like, all right, let's go through this. Like you just have to push through and say, I just need to get the next one. Like a key phrase for me is never get one more. I don't like when people say get one more rep. Because it's a limiting belief. For me, it's like get the next one. Just get the next one and keep going. So for me, it was like get out there, get this next hour in, and keep going. Okay, great. And then as we got towards the end, my body was completely shattered, and I was, for the last hour or so, I was missing reps. So you'd have to jump, and you'd have to reach this line marker for it to count. And I would come, say, a half inch to an inch short of it. So it'd be no rep. So I did probably like 30 to 45 reps that did not count. They'd be like, no rep, doesn't count, do it again. And so that is a really tough place to be when you're so close. Like my goal was to break over 12,000, and I was like, I know timing. I'm like, I'm very close to that, but I keep getting no reps. It's like that internal voice starts to tell you like, you're not going to make it, like this, and you have to shut it down and you have to use whatever mantra it is for you. And for me, it was just get the next one, just get the next one. And, it's nice having a crowd. It's nice having people that love you and you love around you. They're cheering you on. But even when you're in the dark of the night, you don't even hear them. It's just you and your internal voices that are having their own dialogue, and you need to shut them down and move forward. And that's what I did. It was like I got as many as I possibly could to up to the very last second, and then that was it.
What did that feel like when
Yeah.
you hit that very last burpee? What was going through your mind as you were like, okay, I'm done, but you accomplished the one goal. Granted, you were going for the 12,003, but still, what all kind of came into play during that time?
To be honest, it's hard for me to put into words what it felt like. It didn't feel like, oh, thank goodness I'm done, or oh, I don't have to do this again, or anything like that, or I want to keep going. It was an out of body experience. It's hard to put into words. Like what I actually just accomplished didn't sink in, honestly, for several months. How many I actually just did. It was just like, okay, cool, and there was a celebration and everything else. And I think it was more about, being hugged, and I was just a very emotional person. My body was completely broken. That being hugged by my wife and kids and close friends it was just like sharing the love. Like, look what we just did together. Because yeah, granted, I put my body through it, but I couldn't have done it without the help of everybody else. It wouldn't have mattered. So we just accomplished something together, and that was pretty great. An hour later, I was able to get some IV fluids, and everybody else was eating tacos and stuff. The last thing I wanted to do was eat. I was sick. I was dry heaving for the last 14 probably hours of the event, like on the mat, like because my stomach was just such a disaster. So it
When
was good to just share the love with the people. Yeah.
when you say you left it all on the mat, you literally left it all on the mat that day, which is awesome. And kudos to you for not only breaking one of the records, but for the fact of raising money for such an amazing cause, utilizing your why and your purpose for raising money for breast cancer, inspired clearly, yes, by your wife. Brian, you are the epitome of what a lot of people strive to be like, is the resilience about taking action, about, hey, what is next? What is next? Because you know what? I know you probably have something next. And like you said, you always stay prepared so that you have 2 weeks. If something big comes up, your body and your mind is ready to go. What is a place, where is a place that individuals can find you, Brian? Because I know that you do different things right now. What is your website so that we can lead people towards you?
Yeah, my website is eathealthrive.life. And just kind of like how I would live it, right? You have to eat so that you can heal your body and then thrive in life. Like if you think of it that way, eat, heal, thrive.life. And then I work with people on a one-on-one basis. It's ultra personalized, tailored plans. We do biomarkers, 53 different biomarkers, do physical testing, do some emotional work, do mental work. Everybody's different. Everybody's on a different schedule. Everybody needs and wants something different. And then, for me, it's just, like I said, leading from the front. Like, yeah, I have something on my calendar for sure. It's big, and it's in September of 2025. So it's going to take a little time to get ready for it, but I can't wait.
Well, I look forward to hearing what is on your plate. But most importantly, thank you so much for making the time, for being on Define the Fight today, because you know what? If you don't define the fight, how do you expect to win the fight? So if you are currently trying to reach towards a goal, and I'm going to take out try, if you are reaching towards a goal right now, take action, really look at your level of commitment, and then define your why. Because if you don't have a why, how do you expect to have a way? So thank you again, Brian, for being on the show. And you know what? If we really want to win this fight in life, let's do it together. So go out there today, knock it out, define the fight.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. Definitely beat the fight.